Hello, my friends. I hope you're having an awesome day today. Welcome back to another episode of our ProRevenge series, where you come to get your daily dose of satisfaction by listening to other people getting what they deserve. In this episode, there are going to be 5 stories. The first is about OP getting some pro-revenge on his creepy neighbor. In the second story, OP goes on the hunt to find their stolen dog. We'll finish off with an annoying neighbor who keeps reporting OP for excessive noise. I hope you stay for the stories today and hit that subscribe button for future videos. This first story is titled, Creepy Neighbor Gets What's Coming. I started renting a house about 5 years ago. I had always lived in apartments and I was excited to finally have some space and privacy. This was ruined within the first week by my neighbor, who made my 4 years at that house miserable. He's in his late 40s or early 50s, and despite seeming like a fully functional adult, he has never lived outside of his parents' home. He spends every possible minute cleaning or admiring his truck, so he practically lives in the driveway. When he isn't bragging about some ridiculous accomplishment that he just pulled on someone, he's hitting on the wives and daughters of anyone on the street. I moved in during the winter and started noticing footsteps in my yard in the morning. I found out that he was walking into my yard to look into my windows to see what I was watching or playing at night. I bought a simple security system and put up a few cameras, and this stopped. Then, he started mowing my side yard the day after I did. I asked my landlord about this and was told that Mike, the creepy neighbor, considered it his property and kept arguing about the property line. It's just grass, so I let it go. If I had guests over, he would stare at them and sometimes make comments when I wasn't around to hear them. If I was in the backyard, he would have a reason to be in his backyard. If I was in the house or the front yard, he would be in his driveway where he could see into my living room. If I was mowing the yard, he would get out a lawn chair, sit, and watch, putting it away as soon as I was done. It came to a head when I caught him sending his dog into my front yard one morning to do its business instead of letting it out into his fenced backyard like he normally would. I told him to stay on his side of the property line, and he said he was going to break into my house, smash my cameras and computer. The cops were called, and he got off with a warning. Last fall, I told my landlord that I was going to move out. During the conversation, I found out that Mike was on workers' compensation for an injury he'd gotten at work. He was now bragging about how he was using his workers' comp checks to set up his own under-the-table landscaping business. My landlord, like most of the neighborhood, doesn't really like Mike. The landlord's son and family live across the street, and Mike has hit on his wife a few times over the years and has started to try to talk to her 17-year-old daughter. I waited for a day when he had his new work truck and trailer with his name and number on the door. I made a video of him working on his yard, carrying 50 bags of mulch and climbing ladders. I sent videos and pictures to the fraud department of the Workers' Compensation Office. Today, I just found out that he was guilty of fraud. He's ordered to pay back every dollar and may even end up in jail. The best part is, he has no idea that I was behind this. I'm happily living in a new place that has a lot of land between me and the neighbors. Definitely a pro-revenge OP. I wonder what his obsession with that truck was. This next story is titled, The Hunt for a Stolen Dog. It all started on Sunday, May 26th. I was flying back home from Texas, where I was at my girlfriend's sister's wedding. We had a layover in Las Vegas before a 1-hour flight back to Sacramento. I landed in Las Vegas and got reception, and that's when my roommates called me and told me how the door to our backyard gate was busted open, and my beautiful husky wolf mix was missing. That dog is everything to me. She's 3 years old now, and I've had her since she was 2 months old. She's been with me through breakups, layoffs, and evictions. Anyway, she's gone, and I got home to start doing the usual, putting up flyers and notifying every shelter, vet, and her chip company of her disappearance. I put notices on every lost and found page, and suddenly it started to go viral on Facebook. A lot of people really wanted to help me find my dog, and I had eyes everywhere. I woke up one day to find a Craigslist ad with a picture of an unknown girl hugging my dog, with the ad titled Found Husky, sent to me by a friend of mine. So, I contacted the ad maker. The lady was nice and explained how she did not find my dog, but a friend of hers on Instagram found her. She watched her post pictures on Instagram and brag about how the universe had brought her this big, beautiful dog. The lady sent me screenshots of her Instagram and all the pictures she posted of my dog. She then told me, I don't know her personally, but she's a fellow escort. It turns out the girl who has my dog is an escort. So, the lady helped out and messaged the girl to tell her that she found the owner of the dog. The girl fully deleted all the posts of my dog and blocked the lady. So, I thought, alright, this is already viral, so game on. I got all the people who had been searching, including my detective aunt, and we made a hunt. I filed a police report, and they were down to bust the woman but had to find out where she was and where she was holding my dog for them to do anything, which was pretty useless. I got people to start contacting one another, and we found her legal name and all the addresses she's tied to, including her boyfriend, dad, and possibly stepmom's info. We even found out that she was wanted for 2 warrants. She was charged with petty theft and hit and run involving property damage. After I found that info, including her being an escort, which is illegal where I'm from, we had her. I dug up all of her info, including emails and phone numbers, with her escort phone number. So, I called this woman to confront her, and she started yelling at me about how I was harassing and threatening her and how she was going to press charges on me. She then said that she brought my dog to a shelter 2 days prior. I confirmed that wasn't true. Meanwhile, I'm gathering all the proof I have that this dog is mine, which is 3 years of timestamped photos with me and the chip information that my dog is registered with, and her being in my name with the chip company. She's told this and still refused to give her back, saying, "I'm afraid to give the dog back because the owner is threatening me." So, now she's on blast on Facebook, Instagram, and Reddit as well. I'll provide more edits later. Update. I'm not sure what more I can really do. The court fees to even try to get her are going to break my bank, and I already spent over $1,000 trying to find my dog. I'm not sure what to do besides blast her, and hope it ends up on every news station and radio station in the Sacramento region. Update again, oh boy, so check this out. The girl who stole my dog was with another girl when they found my dog, and boy did the plot thicken. They are both escorts. The girl who stole my dog was a blonde thief, and the girl she was with was a red-haired thief. The blonde thief left for San Francisco to work. She came back early to find the red-haired thief was sleeping with the blonde thief's boyfriend. It gets better. The red-haired thief beat the blonde thief's butt, which involved the cops in a police report. The boyfriend was taken to jail for domestic violence, and so was the red-haired thief. Now that it's public record, I looked up the incident. Sadly, there was no house address when I looked it up, so I'll keep you updated. Final update, the red-haired thief contacted me and told me that the blonde-haired thief took my dog to her dad's house. So, I went detective and looked up who her dad is. I got his legal name, Facebook, and phone number. I got a car with a beefy friend of mine, and I drove 1 hour to Valley Springs, where her dad lives. We pulled up to the property, and there's my dog, running up to the fence to greet me. I opened up the gate, and she tackled me. I put her in the car and called the cops. They arrived and did their best to get him to answer the door, but the police chalked it up to him not being home. They took my statement, and I explained everything down to each fine detail, including the escort in question having a record. They said they'll be catching her, and I'll be pressing charges for animal endangerment and grand theft. She'll also be adding a 3rd warrant to her record. I'm so glad it's over, and my dog is so happy to see me again every day. That escort was pretty bold to break a gate to kidnap a dog. I'm glad the dog was returned after all of this. Oh yeah, and here's a beautiful picture of that dog that OP posted. This next story is titled, "Noisy Neighbor Gets a Taste of Her Own Medicine." To clarify, in the particular city I was living in at the time, noise control can be called out at any time of the day. So, this all happened about 15 years ago, give or take, when I was still a kid living at home. We had a house with a huge backyard in the suburbs. The neighboring property next to our driveway was a set of 3 attached rental flats, each with their front door facing our house. We were usually good friends with most of the neighbors, the flats next door included. After the family in the middle flat left, an older single woman moved in. She was home more often than not, so I doubt she had a job, and she wasn't particularly friendly. She kept to herself, which is fine, and never really acknowledged any of the neighbors, but whatever, that's cool. So, one Saturday around midday I was out back with a lawnmower, earning myself some pocket money. It was a big yard, so about 20 minutes in I was only about halfway done. Suddenly an officer knocked on the door. He told me to hurry it up and that they'd received a complaint. Though they thought it was ridiculous, they had to say something. It's a bit stupid, but whatever. Now, we weren't a loud family at all. No parties, no screaming or anything like that. Over the next month, we kept getting visits from noise control, always during the day, mind you. We would get visits for mowing lawns, and even had a couple of complaints when my younger sister and I were hanging out in the backyard on the weekends. Again, we weren't all that loud. At the time, I would have been about 13, so more often than not, the boy next door and I would just be chilling on the swings, just talking. We'd never had an issue with noise, none of our neighbors ever had a problem. We'd never had noise control called before now. So, we asked around. It was fairly obvious at this point that the snobby woman who had moved into the flat next door was doing all of the complaining. My father would always stock up firewood in the spring to prepare for winter and would have to chop it up himself. It's the first weekend of chopping for the year, and it's 2 p.m. on a Saturday. He pulled out his old chainsaw, and it's on for about 1.5 minutes at most, before he realized his chain needed to be replaced. He turned it off, grabbed the axe, and proceeded to chop the wood the long way. The next thing we knew, noise control showed up. The officers were sick of having to visit at this point and were pretty friendly with Dad by now. It turned out that, yes, it was the new neighbor next door. It turned out that she'd been an issue for them for a while, and noise control was well aware of her ridiculous complaints from her previous addresses. Unfortunately, they were legally obligated to follow through with them. The next weekend, surprise, surprise, we got a visit after Dad had been chopping some more wood with an axe. At this point, he decided, why not give her something to actually complain about? A family friend of ours happened to be a truck driver. He drives a big rig, almost Optimus Prime level, up and down the country. He also happened to be back in town that weekend. We gave him a ring, and he was keen to help us out. The next step was to warn all the other neighbors who were fully on board because, as it turned out, we weren't the only ones she was complaining about. We proceeded to the next weekend about 9 a.m. We spent about half an hour getting this big rig truck down our driveway. It was a pretty wide driveway, but it was a pretty wide truck too, so it was a darn tight squeeze. Having been good friends with the previous neighbors, we were familiar with the internal layout of the flats. The bedrooms were directly next to their front doors, facing our driveway. We managed to get the cab of this massive truck far enough into the driveway to be directly next to this lady's bedroom. There was about 1.5 meters separating the truck and her wall. Perfect. On went the horn, loud as heck. It terrified our cats. On it went again and again and again. Then us kids got a turn. You could hear that thing about a block away. We did it for about 10 minutes, then went inside for a coffee and came back out and honked the horn one more time for good measure before our friend took off. This time there were no noise control officers, no complaints, nothing. She just moved out the next week. Hey, that's one way to get rid of a pesky neighbor. I'm surprised the noise control police actually responded during the day. I wonder what area OP lives in that allows noise complaints during the day, because where I live, anything pretty much goes until 11 p.m. This next story is titled, Pyramid Scheme Scammer Ends Up Paying in the End. About 6 or 7 years ago, I was trying to enlist in the military. I ended up not joining, but that's a story for another time. At that point, I was led to believe I was about 4 months away from leaving for boot camp. I was running out of savings and needed a part-time job for some spending cash while I waited. So, I did what any enterprising 20-something would do and searched Craigslist for jobs. I normally hated sales jobs, especially those based on commissions, but I figured it would be a great way to earn some extra cash short-term. I found a few job listings that looked promising and sent out some applications. A few days later, I received a call from David. He was opening a new store and needed associates. He liked my resume and asked if I'd be available for an interview on Friday morning. I was upfront with him, letting him know the distance was a bit more than I'd normally drive for a retail job, and asked what he was offering for an hourly rate to see if it was worth the drive. He told me they were planning to offer an hourly rate in the mid-teens along with commission. It seemed like an okay deal, so I agreed to be there Friday at 8 in the morning. Friday arrived as a cold, rainy day. I wore a nice shirt and tie and drove in heavy traffic to the address David provided. I knew the area from a previous job and eventually found the strip mall I was looking for. However, I didn't see any signage for the company name listed. There was one empty space with no signage and 2 people inside. Okay, maybe they haven't gotten the store sign up yet, no big deal. While in my car, I witnessed a young lady in business casual dress remove a sign from the window stating, "Retail space for rent, call 1-800-NUMBER." That was a little weird, but maybe it was their first day in the space. I gave them the benefit of the doubt. I walked in about 5 minutes early, and immediately my BS meter went from the lowest to the highest level. The tables were simple plastic folding tables, the kind college kids would buy for beer pong while shopping at Target. The walls were plastered with laminated charts featuring tons of dollar signs, smiling faces from stock photos, and an organizational chart showing an all too familiar shape, a pyramid. Oh, great. All right, I might as well have some fun for a while to wait out the traffic going home. The young lady in the dress approached me, introducing herself as Cindy. She welcomed me to the company and asked me to have a seat. She sat at her desk, another plastic table, and proceeded to go through paperwork, though she was really just shuffling papers around. We got to chatting, and I asked her how long she'd worked for David. She said she'd been his secretary for about 6 months and that I was going to love it here. Eventually, a guy walked out of a back office, early 30s, clean cut, wearing an ill-fitted suit from JCPenney. As he walked over, all smiles, Cindy said, "Oh, Dennis, our newest recruit is here." The guy stopped in his tracks, gave her a cold stare, and said, "It's David, Cindy, we've been over this." He turned back to me and gave me his brightest, hard-to-find good help these days smile. David sat me down, welcomed me, and said they were going to start with a group interview. He had me sit in a circle of chairs. Eventually, more people came in and sat down. David got up and began to thank us all for coming. He told us about an exciting new opportunity from Cutco. He pulled out a set of knives and explained how, with this company, we could make as much money as we wanted while setting our own hours. He even pulled out a textbook, saying their company had revolutionary tactics featured in college textbooks. He opened to a page, his hand covering parts of it, making sure we could all clearly see the word Cutco in large letters. Sad to say, a lot of the other interviewees were impressed by this. One pregnant woman seemed very excited that she could work around her pregnancy and upcoming birth. David went on about how much money he'd made, how hard workers would rise to the top quickly, and how you could retire in 3 years with very hard work. At this point, David said he needed to take a quick phone call and gave us 5 minutes to have some coffee, chit-chat, or whatever. As he stepped away, he left his college textbook behind. I picked it up, found the earmarked page, and read it. As I thought, it was all about pyramid schemes, with Cutco listed as one of the largest examples. It explained how these were essentially scams, not economically viable. I decided to share this with the group, explaining how pyramid schemes work and how he was just scamming us. They seemed incredulous, so I suggested that when David returned, they ask him what we needed to pay to get started. That finally got everyone to realize what was going on. David walked in a few minutes later, and one of the women in the group asked what we needed to get started. David said, "Well, all you need is your first set of knives to demonstrate. You can sell that one directly or have them order one, and we'll keep that as your demo kit. Doesn't matter, you just have to pay the startup fees for it." That's when all heck broke loose. One guy stood up saying David was wasting our time and calling him a jerk for trying to pull this. The pregnant woman was crying because she thought she'd found a place that would allow her to work despite being pregnant. David was clearly confused and flustered, asking who told them all of this. When it became apparent I was the wrench in the machine, David got upset and started telling me to leave. People were yelling at David. David was yelling at me, and Cindy was trying to tell everyone she'd never met David before today and didn't even know what this was. Eventually, we all walked out, leaving David behind. As I walked to the door, I saw, leaning against the wall, the sign that was in the window before, "Retail space for rent, call 1-800 number." As I got in my car, I dialed the number. I got through to a person and asked about the property for rent at the location of David's company. The nice lady on the phone apologized, saying they had just leased that property out. I asked if she knew how long the lease was for, as I was really interested in the property. She said she wasn't sure, as they hadn't done the official paperwork yet, but they were on their way to the space to sign everything with the leaseholder in a few hours. I told her everything that had just happened and about David using the space for a pyramid scheme. She got extremely upset, saying this happens all the time in the industry. People go to sign at the last minute, and the leaseholder opts out after using it for some fly-by-night operation. She thanked me for the info, and I thought that was the end of it. Or so I thought. A few weeks later, I received an email from David telling me how I ruined his life. He said his property management found out what was going on and wasn't refunding his down payment on the space, claiming he violated a clause in the paperwork he signed to hold the property. He said he knew I was the one who called because I'm a terrible human being, and now he was out thousands for the space and supplies. He only wanted to give us jobs and help us. It was a long and very angry email with several unkind things said about me and my mother. I called the 1-800 number again and spoke with the same lady. She was very interested in the email from David, where he essentially admitted what he was trying to do. She said it would help them in all the legal proceedings, and I was more than happy to send that email along to her. Her lawyer said it should be an open and shut case at that point. I'd like to think I'm a helper. I hope you enjoyed that story of how OP got some revenge on a guy trying to prey on people. This next story is titled, My Amway Experience, a Cult-Like Ride. Story time from me about the time I was sucked into a multi-level marketing business, not a pyramid scheme as they like to call it, called Amway, or as my friends and many people call it, Scamway. Before I get into my story, yes, it's possible to make money selling Amway products, and many people do. I'm not saying it's 100% a scam, and I'm not bashing the business or accusing them of being a pyramid scheme. I'm only sharing my personal experience, so nobody from Amway comes after me. When I was 18 years old, I was sucked into a business opportunity. One day, while sitting at a Starbucks having a coffee and killing time, a nice, clean-cut guy approached me. Just so you know, coffee shops are the places of choice for these multi-level marketers or recruiters. They love to prey on young, naive adults who haven't quite figured out their lives yet. I can't speak for all multi-level marketing businesses, but with Amway and World Financial Group, they usually approach you wearing a business suit, looking super clean-cut. This guy asked me how my day was and started talking to me all nice. He mentioned he was looking to start a business and was seeking potential people to join. At first I thought, what does this clean-cut businessman want with me? I'm 18, I have no knowledge, no money to invest, nothing. We ended up sitting for an hour, basically him interviewing me. He left his name and phone number and said he'd call me for a business meeting later in the week. The whole time he was saying he usually doesn't approach younger kids. But I looked like I had so much potential, and he'd love to mentor me to make lots of money, live a lavish lifestyle, drive a nice car, and so on. I was 18, broke, and wanted money in that Instagram life, so I thought this man was a godsend, an angel who decided to help poor little me. Little did I know I was in for a wild ride. He called me later that week and said, on Thursday, we're going to meet at that Starbucks again, and you've got to wear a nice suit. I didn't have a nice suit, so I had to scramble to buy one. Thursday rolled around, and I showed up at Starbucks. He was there with two other clean-cut guys who sat me down and interviewed me. They made it seem like this business opportunity was only for exclusive, important people, and I was one of the best candidates. Looking back, I know they were just making it seem exclusive. You could literally bring your grandma or anyone who doesn't even speak the language and they'd be recruited. At Starbucks, they gave me an ultimatum: are you in or are you not in? Do you want to make this money or do you want to be poor forever? I was like, no, I don't want to be poor. You guys seem to know what you're doing. You're dressed nice. You look successful. It was all a sham. They had nothing. They asked if I wanted to buy a starter kit to begin, which cost $250. I thought, why do I have to buy a starter kit? You're starting a business and need me to sell stuff, so why would I pay? The guy said, Kim, you're going to be in our business. You need to spend this $250 to buy this kit. It's going to help train your mind. I was naive, broke, and my family wasn't rich. These guys were promising me retirement in 5 years. So I said, okay, I'll pay $250 for this kit. The kit contained a book by Robert Kiyosaki called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and some CDs with motivational talks by Tony Robbins and Les Brown, basically a kit to brainwash you for success. They told me the first meeting was the following Thursday and I needed to dress up. The address they gave me was a run-down apartment building. I'm not kidding, the first meeting was in a sketchy apartment, with 30 people crammed into folding chairs in some guy's apartment room. A couple was introduced, supposedly making $300,000 a year, retired at 30, doing whatever they wanted, traveling the world. Everyone treated them like gods. They gave a talk about how you don't want to work your whole life, how a job stands for just over broke, and how you can make unlimited money selling makeup, energy drinks, vitamins, and more with Amway. They sold this lavish lifestyle, and everyone was excited, thinking they could retire in 5 years. In my mind, I was like, this doesn't make sense. You're bringing in people with no sales experience and saying they can sell stuff and retire in 5 years? They were adamant this wasn't a pyramid scheme. They said, if everyone in this room brings 5 people, and your 5 people bring another 5 people into Amway, you can make $100,000 a year doing nothing. In Amway, you don't become rich selling their products. Nobody buys their overpriced stuff, like toothpaste for $5 that you have to mark up to $6 or $7 when you can buy Colgate for $2 at the grocery store. The real money comes from recruiting people. When they buy products to sell, you get a cut of their commission. The number one rule in Amway was to only use their products to be loyal to the company that's making you money. In reality, my mentor was telling me to use their products so he could get a steady paycheck from my purchases. I was in Amway for 6 months. 5 months and 29 days too long. I realized everyone around me was trying to brainwash me. It was like a cult. They told me to only hang out with people from these meetings because others didn't have the same vision of success and were losers. They also said never to talk about how much money you're making because nobody was making any money. I became friends with a few guys, and after one meeting I asked, "Are you making money?" They admitted they weren't. If you asked why you weren't succeeding, they'd say, "You don't want it bad enough. You're not working hard enough. You're a loser. Don't give up." The biggest mistake was telling my recruiter I was quitting. He spam called me, texted me constantly, called me a loser, and said I deserved to live a poor life and didn't deserve money. The funny thing is, he was acting rich, promising retirement in 5 years, but he was working full-time as a bartender at a nightclub, not making money from Amway either. That was my experience with Amway. I'm not bashing it, just sharing my story. The guy who recruited me isn't even in the business anymore. Everyone eventually quits and realizes it's a money pit. Below are my opinions on each of the stories. Story 1. Creepy neighbor gets what's coming. This story is so satisfying. Mike sounds like a total creep, spying through your windows, letting his dog mess up your yard, and threatening to break your cameras. That's next-level obsessive. Catching him on video hauling mulch and climbing ladders while claiming workers' comp fraud was a brilliant move. Sending that evidence to the fraud department and watching him lose his payouts, possibly facing jail time, feels like perfect justice. The fact that he's clueless you were behind it makes it even sweeter. I'm with you, his truck obsession is bizarre, but I love that your landlord and the neighborhood backed you up. This story's a masterclass in using evidence to take down a menace without getting your hands dirty. Story 2. The hunt for a stolen dog. Oh man, my heart was racing reading this. Losing your husky-wolf mix must have been gut-wrenching. She sounds like the best companion. The escort stealing your dog and bragging about it on Instagram was bold and infuriating. Your detective work, rallying your network, and uncovering her warrants and shady life was impressive. Driving to her dad's house with your beefy friend to reclaim your dog was such a triumphant moment. I can picture her tackling you in joy. Pressing charges for animal endangerment and grand theft is the cherry on top. That picture of your dog is adorable, and I'm thrilled you got her back. This story is a testament to never giving up on what matters most. Story 3. Noisy neighbor gets a taste of her own medicine. This one's pure petty brilliance. That snobby neighbor calling noise control over daytime lawn mowing and kids playing is absurd. Talk about a killjoy. Your dad's plan to bring in a massive truck to blast its horn right by her bedroom window at 9 a.m. was genius. The fact that the whole neighborhood was in on it and she moved out without a peep afterward is so satisfying. I'm with you. Daytime noise complaints are wild. Where I live, you'd be laughed off for that too. This story's a perfect example of giving a complainer a real reason to cry, and I love the teamwork that made it happen. Story 4. Pyramid scheme scammer ends up paying in the end. This story had me hooked. David's shady Cutco pitch in a sketchy strip mall, complete with beer pong tables and a fake textbook moment, screams pyramid scheme. Your quick thinking to check the textbook and expose the scam to the other interviewees was a power move. Calling the property management to tank his lease was the ultimate nail in the coffin. Losing his deposit and supplies must have stung. His angry email blaming you only makes it sweeter. He dug his own grave. I love that you saved others, like that pregnant woman, from falling for his lies. This story's a great reminder to trust your gut and call out scams. Story 5. My Amway experience, a cult-like ride. Ugh, this one hits close to home. Getting sucked into Amway at 18 by a slick-talking recruiter promising riches is such a classic MLM trap. The sketchy apartment meeting, overpriced products, and cult-like only hang with winners vibe are so creepy. Your realization that nobody was making money, despite their brainwashing tactics, shows how sharp you were to see through it. The recruiter's meltdown when you quit, calling you a loser while bartending to make ends meet, is peak irony. I'm glad you got out after 6 months and shared this cautionary tale. This story's a raw, honest look at the MLM hustle, and I'm rooting for you for escaping.